Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Penalty Loop Podcast, a podcast about biathlon by Jordan Gottschalk from Penalty Loop and a regular guest, RJ Weiss from Biathlon Analytics.
All right, we are back with a new episode, and we have another Canadian athlete with us today, and it's Logan, do I say Pletz? Is that the...
That's right, yeah.
Is that a Austrian roots name?
I think it's Slovakian, actually.
Slovakian, okay.
Yeah. I went to World Juniors in Slovakia in 2019, and my parents actually visited the town we traced our heritage back to, like 6 generations or something. So
nice.
But I think it's Pletcz is how it was originally spelled in Europe. So yeah.
Seemed to happen a lot, and if you go back a number of generations, that people didn't really know how to spell names, so they made some name changes accidentally.
That's right. Yeah. So.
And you're from Saskatchewan originally, and now in Canmore, or? Yeah,
I grew up in Lumsden, Saskatchewan, 30 minutes outside of Regina. Then I lived in Whistler for 3 years after I graduated high school, and then moved to Canmore 2 years ago when I joined the national team.
The national team, yeah.
And
so you've never been on like the training centers before? I know they have an Alberta one, but do they have something like that in Saskatchewan?
With the Whistler Nordic Development Center, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I just lived in Saskatchewan until the end of high school, and then when I graduated, I moved out there. So we had a pretty good group of guys at the time. Would have been summer of 2019 to spring of 2022, I guess. So, yeah.
And then did you do any NORCAM, like North America races in those times when you were in Saskatchewan, or?
Like Calfrex in Alberta, mostly. Like we traveled to Alberta a lot. Nationals as well. And then I went to World Juniors when I was in grade 12. We had Canada Games and World Juniors the same year.
Right.
So that was a busy year to get my classes done too.
Yeah.
So and then since then, World Juniors in 2021 during COVID, which was quite the adventure in Austria, and then 2022 in Soldier Hollow as well.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So. Yeah.
And so you joined the national team. Was that the first year that Scott wasn't on? Scott Gow?
Yeah, just missed him.
Okay.
But I trained with Christian for 2 years.
Right.
So we're pretty good friends still, even though he's washed up a little bit, or retired, or whatever you want to call it.
Does he still train with you sometimes, just like on roller skiing or something?
Yeah, we train disc golf together, I guess you could say that.
Oh, okay.
But not so much physical anymore. So he's coaching the Biathlon Alberta Training Center now in Canmore. So he's still around in the community.
Is it Scott or Christian you're talking about?
That's Christian, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew about Christian on the BATC, but I wasn't. I thought maybe you meant Scott was on there too, but no. And so I meant, is Scott ever going with you still?
He came out a few times last year, maybe for a few of our weekend workouts, once or twice in the summer.
Right.
Yeah. We saw him around because he was interning for Biathlon Canada for a summer as well. So he was out in Canmore. Summer student thing. I don't know exactly what it was, but he was helping us with draft some of the like sports specific documents and doing the Instagram and stuff like that. So yeah, we had him around.
Nice.
For sure. Yeah. But
sorry, Scott. Jordan, I know you have a number of questions as well. I feel like I'm the one talking all the time, but
no, I'm letting you letting you burn yourself out, and then I'll take over and ask all the really silly questions.
No, if you can maybe just do a brief introduction of how you got into biathlon, and you know, if you were inspired by a certain athlete, or if it was a family thing, or
well, I didn't. I started playing hockey as a kid, and then we moved to this. My family moved to the city to Regina when I was probably 12 or 13, and hockey system in the city is like quite a bit different than it was in our town of 4,000 people at the time.
Right.
So, so I don't know why biathlon specifically. Like, I don't know if I can actually tell you. I guess I had quite a bit of natural talent in cross country, running, track and field as a 12-year-old. And my grandpa was a big hunter as well. So, but my mom didn't want me to go hunting. So I think it was kind of a compromise because my grandpa would actually take me to practice for biathlon. So I still got the skills without any of the dead animals, I guess you could say.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
and then
you made mom happy, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was the start, and like we really didn't have that many people. Like we would have had maybe 5 kids my age at that at that time in the province.
Right.
So, but we also we'd have like summer camps for a few days in the summer up in North Battleford. So our current provincial coach and at the time, Doug Sylvester, was super good about getting us together, and so had lots of fun doing that. We'd all stay in a cabin and hang out and yeah, sort of learn together. So yeah, that was sort of the start of it, and then yeah, really, I wouldn't say I really got serious until, grade 11, grade 12. I was still playing basketball 5 days a week and running track and cross country and all that stuff. So I really didn't like go on a training plan or anything specific for biathlon until I graduated. So, which I don't know. I can say that's the way you should do it because that's the way I did it. But I think it definitely, like, to have lots of sports in your life as late as possible is definitely a huge asset. Even just like on the physical literacy side, as well as just like not getting mentally burnt out, right? Because now I've been at it for, I guess 5 years since then. So I probably got a few more in me, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so.
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were running track, what were your events?
High school, I did 3,000, 1,500, 800 occasionally, and also I did high jump as well. I'm like 6'2", so
all right.
But we had a really good high jump teacher at a really young age, randomly in Lumsden. So, and it's a technique that you have to learn at a young age. And so I'm not that explosive of an athlete. Like I'm definitely more of I don't have that much fast twitch muscle fiber, but I feel like technically, I was maybe competent, okay. So yeah, track and field provincials, I would do when I made it out of Regina. I was like 3,000, 1,500 and high jump in the same day, which was a lot.
It's a heck of a day.
Yeah.
What was your were you as a track athlete, were you obviously you're a distance athlete, but did you have like a closing kick? Were you just like slow and steady, like you would keep sort of like an even pace the whole way through? How did it come out for you?
Kick, yeah, probably not.
I was gonna say no 800, probably not gonna add a lot of foot speed there.
Yeah. I don't know. I ran with a few guys my whole high school career.
Sure.
And I was always we were always sort of 1, 2, 3 in that order. So I was always kind of either second or third behind a guy named Ron, who was a few seconds faster than me all the time.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I think I don't want to say we kind of settled into our places a little bit, but I think by the third year, when I kind of saw him walk off the front, I was like, okay, well, maybe next year.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I had uh, like a signature
Sure,
at
gotcha.
all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just ran.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was fun too. I mean, when you have 4 kids that do your sport in the province of biathlon, it's nice when you're out of your high school, there's 25 of you that go to
Sure.
track, whatever, right? And so I think that was a big part of it too. Same with basketball, which I did like quite late into high school as well. So, yeah.
What was your, do you have a basketball comparison, like to a current NBA player? Like what your game was like?
I was shooting guard.
Okay.
We had a good team at the time. Like our whole starting lineup was over 6 feet tall in grade 10.
Oh, wow.
So, me being 6'1" and a little bit, I wasn't close to being down in the center, down there. So, I shot a lot of threes. I probably wasn't much of a playmaker. I was kind of maybe head down a little bit and go to the basket.
Got it.
Yeah. It was fun at the time for sure.
Yeah, so big 3-and-D guy. You were classic shooting guard.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem was I was always a lot better at lunchtime than I was when we actually played in the evening. So that was a running joke for sure for a couple of years. So we play at lunch every day, right? And then we get to the evening, it's like, Logan, you can't just shoot it like you did 6 hours ago?
Yeah, just let it fly.
So
my son, I'm one of the coaches of my son's soccer team, and he's 10. And they always, at practice, they do everything right. When we say, you have to defend goal side, they're perfectly goal side. And then in the match, they're just looking at you like, what? What are we supposed to do? And they're just like no energy, and it's weird that way.
Yeah,
but it's all good.
No, for sure.
So then
how
there,
did you...
I think we're going to ask the same question, but at some point in there, you made the decision that you were going to go forward with biathlon as more than just one of the sports you were doing, but as your career.
That's where the money is, right?
In Canada, that's right.
Yeah.
Nailed it. I mean, I wasn't particularly good at track, and I wasn't particularly good at basketball. I think I was like better at biathlon than there are 5 of us, right? So it's pretty easy to be top 5. But no, I went to Whistler the summer between grade 11 and grade 12 for 2 months. The team I ended up joining, so Etienne, who's the current coach out there still, he invited me out for 2 months, and I lived in the lodge, like where the Olympics were. Trained at the Olympic venue.
So had he seen you at the Nationals that he invited you?
Yeah, so I actually won the Nationals individual that year, 2018 in New Brunswick. And so then that's sort of where it started, and then made the decision to move out there shortly thereafter. And then the following winter, I had a pretty good year at World Juniors and Canada Games. And yeah, from there, I don't know if I really had a moment where I was like, this is like what I want to do. It kind of just evolved into that, and then the path was pretty clear from there. And so then I guess I just hopped on it. So I thought school is really important to me too. So that's always been tricky to manage. So I've always tried to keep up with doing something school-wise. I started at Athabasca in business at the time, and did about a year's worth over 3 years, and then switched to engineering at SAIT, mechanical engineering technology. Well, I'm in open studies until the fall, but I've been going to be in the fall, so we'll see how much I can get done with my travel schedule. It's nice. I got a few credits that carried over, but I still have I'm probably halfway through the diploma,
Okay.
which is nice because I haven't stepped foot on campus yet. So
Yeah, no
I'm able to do most of it online. So
That's awesome.
now I'm kind of at the point where it's like, okay, now I actually have to show up if I want to keep doing it. So,
Right.
Yeah, which I'm excited for. So yeah.
And then that's kind of a lead in. I know Jordan wanted me to probably wait a little longer, but has the mechanical engineering interest anything to do with a passion for biathlon rifles and 3D printing? And
Yeah, so I think, pretty early on, well, my dad's a woodworker. He taught practical applied arts at high school, so he has all the skills from woodworking to welding to automotive repair to drafting to everything in that suite. So, it really started with, hey, let's add a little wood piece here for the prone grip, or let's put some epoxy putty under the pistol grip to make it a bit bigger because I have pretty big hands. And that would have been 2019, 2020, and then from there, I really I started looking into 3D printing right before I moved to Canmore, right before I joined the national team. And it was, I thought it was interesting because to start with, standing blocks specifically was what interested me the most. And I think because you see a whole suite of them on the World Cup and at Junior Worlds, and so I was like, okay, that's interesting. My thumb's kind of sore the way it is in my standing position. Maybe I can fix that, right? That's kind of how it started. And so I bought a 3D printer kind of on a whim, to be honest. I kind of got caught in a Facebook marketplace scam where I originally spent $500 and then somehow I'm $1,000 deep. I'm like, hey, guess I'm doing this. Not a scam, but I got sold essentially. So this printer showed up at my house and I had no idea what to do with it at all. It had none of the nice features that you would expect from a 3D printer, no bed leveling, no Wi-Fi connectivity, nothing. It had screws and it was awkward and it printed on an area of 150 millimeters squared. Terrible. It was so bad, compared to the one I have now. But it was great for learning because I had to do everything perfectly, right? And so from there, it showed up and I was like, okay, well now I have to learn how to use Fusion. So then started.
Is that the software to design?
Fusion 360, or Autodesk, and so first few that I printed off. First of all, getting it to print off properly was a pain in to even get it to work. So that probably took a few weeks, and the other thing was I lived with my teammates, right? So there were four of us in the house, and so there was I think at the time a lot of communal interest at the same time. So I'd print something off and then we'd throw it on one of our rifles and there would be 3 or 4 of us that would try it out. Right. And so, but yeah, it really took me probably 12 months to figure out something that actually worked. The first summer I was on the national team, I had literal garbage strapped onto my rifle, stuff that was just so bad. I can't, looking back on it, I can't even believe it worked. And stuff was breaking and people,
your coaching must be super excited about that.
Yeah, coaches were couldn't believe it, honestly. And one of my other friends, Zach, moved on the national team at the same time. And he's to be honest, probably been my biggest supporter of stuff that I do, right? So he had garbage strapped onto his rifle too that I'd made for him, right? And so it took us 6 months probably of trial and error, and then so we went into the first World Cup season, and I think I had a standing block and I had a butt plate because the butt plates that were on the rifles that we were using, the Sansang, the French Sansang stocks, they bend and break like first fall, essentially.
Okay.
So you fall on it, it breaks. So, and they're super hard to source because you have to get them from France, and they're probably $300. So that was one of the first things. It's like, hey, can we make some butt hooks or a butt plate to replace this? So we ended up actually doing breakaway butt plates, intentionally breakaway. So when you fall on it, it would break, but it would save the rest of your rifle.
Right.
So that was the first winter, and hindsight, they were probably too breakable. Like, I think I probably traveled like 6 at a time. Like, fall and break
one for each race.
Yeah, it's like, well, yes and no. Like, I didn't fall on it as much. Zach was definitely a lot harder on the stuff that I make than I am. But yeah, so that was kind of the first year, and it was all built off the Sansang platform, off the stocks that that I had.
And sorry, is that the stock that Justine Brézard-Boucher, for example, uses, that has sort of the square, I guess, bolts that goes from your main stock that you can attach your standing block on?
Yeah, it's like a rectangular pillar, essentially. That
right.
I think Justine's is custom made, but it's on the same platform.
Right.
So a lot of that stuff's interchangeable. Yeah. So, and it's super good for that because stuff just comes off easily, like with the clamps and stuff. So,
right.
So it's, in that sense, it was pretty easy to. I would always use the aluminum hardware that came with it, and then just essentially the print would replace the wood part of whatever it was. So, yeah. So, and I started working on the design for the full stock at that time as well, but it lived on my computer like for 12 months, essentially. Like, I kind of go back to it, but there was a lot of stuff I didn't know, a lot of measurements I didn't know what they needed to be. For example, getting the pistol grip in the correct spot relative to where the trigger is going to be is pretty difficult. Getting the pistol grip even the right shape that isn't just like as if to get it like an organic shape took me quite a while to figure out, and to actually, so I ended up exporting the file into Blender, doing the organic modeling there, and then importing it back in to Fusion.
So you don't use a scanner or anything to...
So I do have a scanner now. Yeah.
Okay.
So that came along midsummer last summer. So I still had the first 3D printer I made, or I bought, sorry. And so the first stock that I made was actually in 4 pieces. So it was 160 millimeters, like butt, and then essentially the pistol grip, and then where the magazines go, and then, the magazine, like where the bedding is, and then where the magazines are held at the front. So it's pinned together in 4 pieces. Because that's all I could do. I couldn't print it in any less than that, essentially. So, and so I used that one all last summer. But I was really struggling with a few of like the dimensions that I didn't quite get right. Cheek piece, completely wrong spot. And so I had done the mount for the cheek piece on the inside, not the camera side of the rifle, on the inside. And so the adjustable limit wouldn't go far enough the other way. So it was always basically like in my nose to try and get my eye through the sight. So a few things like that I had to work through. And so I went into this, at the time, sorry, let me back up. Last summer, I reached out to a company called Snapmaker, which is a 3D printing company. They make a 3D printer that does CNC and laser engraving all in one. It's just like quick change tool heads. Super awesome.
Okay.
And so I got one of those sort of on like a marketing deal to do some feedback for them. But the work area is 400 by 400 by 400. So it's like it allowed me to do essentially the stock in 2 pieces instead of 4, which was a huge change And then the other thing it allowed me to do was, because I wasn't maxing out the build height, I could do it on an angle. So all of the layer lines are printed on a 45-degree angle. Because 3D printing, all of the structural weakness comes from the layer adhesion. So if you print it vertically, then it'll snap off vertically. Same as like wood is weaker in one direction, right? So by putting the layer lines on a 45-degree angle, I think I probably increased the strength by 4 or 5 or 6 times. Like it was a huge change. And so I got that. I put this one together, and this was going into last winter, and I wasn't planning on using it. It was going to be like a spare, because I'd kind of gotten the one that I'd built like a handle on it. And then one of the magnets fell out. So I'm using magnets for the clips. One of the magnets fell out. So I was like, okay, I'll use the spare for one day. And I went to the range and I shot the spare, and I think I hit maybe 80 or 100 targets in a row. Like it was like immediate, just like, this is way better.
Wow. So
I was like, hey, well, I just hit 100 targets in a row. I can't just put this back in the case, right? So took a bit of convincing my coaches, but I was like, guys, I think I really want to use this one. And so then I ended up taking both to Europe. And I arrived in Europe, and the airline had broken the old one on the way over.
Oh, the old one.
So I think it was.
You had nothing to do with that, right?
I didn't have anything to do with it. It was in the case. I opened the case after our like ungodly 48-hour like connections, and it was broken in half. So I want to say it was kind of a blessing in disguise. The magnet falling out. It was like such a simple thing I had to glue back in, but it like totally shifted last winter, and my year over. I can't remember what my shooting percentage was the year before, but I think I probably went from 73 to 89 in a 12-month period in prone. Standing, I'm still working on it. I think I maybe had a 5% improvement. But the thing I've really noticed compared to a wood stock is the feedback from the shot is like totally different to when you're using wood. Like I could describe it maybe as if you like turn your mouse sensitivity up to 100 and then you tried to play games with it. Like at the start, you're just like all over the place, and then like good gamers play with it at like 120%, right? Like more than you'd ever be able to do. And so at the start, it was really hard to handle because the shot, I think the plastic is stiffer, and the way I'm wrapping it, because I'm wrapping it in carbon fiber as well, so it's sort of like a composite. So I think it changes the way the feedback is to my shoulder, and it was really hard to deal with at the start, but I think now I've maybe gotten a bit more of a hang of it. So so that's where we're at. I'm on version 5 maybe now. So
is your complete stock 3D printed now then?
That's right. Yeah.
Like there's no. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so a lot of the hardware is still aluminum. So I'm using a similar pillar system to the Sansang, and then I'm using the adjustment on the back end is similar to the Bachmann stock. If you've seen the Italian carbon fiber stocks, so they have like a slider that's about this long, and it slides, and then it tightens with some threaded inserts. But everything else, like the core of it is 3D printed, the cheek piece, and the pistol grip. And then I also did sort of an integrated prone hand stop that has like the usual hand stop, which is just a circle, essentially, like a brick. And then I used some plasticine to fill out my hand because I had a really bad cant. So when I was shooting, I would be on an angle like this, right? Like off, like on a 10-degree tilt or a 5-degree tilt or whatever. So I added material on the inside of the clip side of my hand, and it brought it straight again. So that's where I used the 3D scanner, was laid some plasticine on my rifle, took a scan of it, and then exported that document, and then used that on the 3D printer, and sort of had to work it into the hand stop model I had originally. But so that works really well. I'm really happy with that. I've done generic versions of that one for other people so it fits on the regular Anschutz Fortner as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it's been the problem is that probably every 2 weeks, everything I did 2 weeks ago is just like complete garbage. Like the learning curve, like the ramp was like so crazy that
that's wild.
That it just like I just look at what I did 12 months ago and I'm just shaking my head, and I look what I did a month ago. I'm like, oh, okay. Like it's maybe slowed down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at on that project.
And did you do a lot of testing with resin? Like which resin holds well in the cold, or?
Yeah. So there's the cold, and then there's also the UV component as well, right? Because it's outside.
Okay.
Right. So, but the bigger problem I had was I picked a resin originally, an aircraft grade resin that you'd use for like a fiber or a ultralight project. But the curing temperature was too high. So I was curing it in my garage in the fall, winter, it's maybe 5-10 degrees. And so it was taking like a ridiculously long, like 48 hours or longer to cure. So that was sort of, and I didn't really figure that out for a few months, to be honest. And then I'd also bought $100 worth of resin. So I was like, well, I'm not going to throw this out. So, but yeah, played around a little bit with that. The other thing that I've had to play around with a bit, which I'm working on actually more recently, is shaping the 3D print so that the fiber will lay nicely on it. Like you can't really have any 90-degree corners because the fiber will like pillow, and then when you go to sand it, then you just sand right through, and then it just looks like garbage, right? So playing with that, the vacuum bag technique, I've had to build vacuum bags out of this kind of stretchy plastic material, and like laying it up in the right order because it's like fiber, and then you have a few layers of breather fabric and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different variables to work through for sure. Biathlon rifle is not the easiest shape to sand and get smooth and perfect at the end as well. So I've taken a lot of inspiration from like building bike frames. There's a lot of people that do bike frame builds and online. So that's been a good source of information because it's a similar sort of process. The only thing I'm doing differently is actually the core stays inside, right? So bike frame's hollow, obviously, right? But so yeah. So I'm actually the most recent one I made that I'm going to use this summer and this winter. I got it to about 150 grams underweight. So which is sweet because then I can put 150 grams wherever I want it. So if I want it on the barrel, I can put it there. If I want it like further back, I can put it at the butt, and I can play with that as well, which is super cool.
Is it 3.5 kilos?
That's right. Yeah.
Required weight. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can be as heavy as you want, but
that's
not lighter than that.
Yeah, but you don't really want to go over like 3.8. Probably is like when I'm doing equipment check on the World Cup, there's nobody over 3.8 really. I think that's where maybe the drop off isn't quite worth it. I think a little bit of extra weight can help in the standing, like in the wind. For sure. Like an extra 150 grams, like I think there's a argument for that. But any more than that, I think you just lose too much time on this like ski. So.
And would you add that weight on the barrel?
Yeah, so right now I have a barrel weight on. So, and I like it like that. And the other thing is I don't really have a good dense enough material to, like, I could just tape the barrel weight onto a different part of my rifle, I guess, right? But I'd like to figure out a more elegant solution than that, whether it's a little dense disc or a plate of some sort. I don't really know, but but I have been like thinking about my standing, because that's kind of where I'm focusing on at the moment, and I am trying to get a weight further out on the nose and move the balance a bit further out. So that's where I'm at right now. It's about 3 inches off the end of where the front sight is.
Okay.
So.
And that has a lot to do with the kind of vibrations as well, right? We were just talking about it last Monday with the.
Yeah, there's an argument for that. I haven't actually done the vibration testing where I'd move it like an inch down like the barrel. I think some people do that. Like they'll buy a barrel weight, they'll start it at the far end and then shoot a 10-shot group, move it an inch, shoot a 10-shot group, move it an inch, all the way down. But we'll do ammo testing before the winter. And as long as my rifle can group a 13 millimeter group, I think is what our standard is. 14 millimeters maybe at like -20, then that's like within tolerance, right? Like it's pretty hard to find a barrel that can go smaller than 11 or 10 at -20. So
do you know, sorry, it's a bit of a side question, but like, the Johannes bows and stuff, they get kind of first dibs at the best Fisher skis. Is there a similar thing with Anschutz barrels, that they have like special barrels in a secret room that the top athletes get first dibs at, or?
I've seen some evidence of that. I've seen some of that. I know Martin Fourcade used to do barrel testing with 10 or 20 barrels before the season. But the thing about Anschutz also, from my understanding, like they don't sponsor anybody. Like they have a monopoly on the market, right? So they don't have to.
Right.
So I think it is just a cash thing for the most part. I think maybe they support them a little bit, maybe with the access to it. In the past, Biathlon Canada sent people over there to get our rifles like redone, like cleaned and fixed and stuff like that in the summer. We used to send our rifles away for 2 weeks at a time. Like mid-August, we just wouldn't have them. So I think they're like pretty open. And there's also a guy on the World Cup to fix rifles all the time, every weekend. So
from Anschutz?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say it's pretty accessible to everybody if you want to go on, I don't know if you purchase 20 barrels and try them all and then return 19 of them or how it works. But I mean, if you have that ability. Then...
Well, they have that claim that they test every barrel and, they should be pretty much the same.
Yeah. The bigger thing that we're looking at is like the ammo lots. There's a huge variation in ammo serial numbers. So like a 10 mil or
within the brand.
Within the brand, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So like Lapua Polar can shoot a 15 millimeter group difference, like at -20. So one lot will be 15 mils, next lot will be 30. And like 30 mils is like it's like worse than you'd imagine, than you'd think. Which I was really surprised by, and I got my barrel testing results back last year. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's as good as it gets. But it was interesting actually because Christian shot a group in precision one day. He shot a perfect 100 in precision, but it was actually it was theoretically improbable because the rifle shouldn't have been able to shoot that good. So he actually we figured that some of his shots were off, but they were off in the same way that the barrel wasn't accurate. So in the opposite way that the barrel wasn't accurate, and so then it actually grouped tighter. So because it was a 6 or a 7 mil group. So
wow,
yeah. So there's definitely more than even I'm aware of. For sure.
And is that the brand that Biathlon Canada uses, like or do you guys all have your different brands? And
yeah, we're sponsored by Lapua, so we get all of it from them. Yeah. Yeah.
And then they have you said the Polar for the cold days, and then are they the ones that have the biathlon range specifically, or?
Yeah, so we actually have a cold range in Canmore as well, like one lane. It's underground. Under the Nordic Center. And they also have...
It reminds me of a war bunker.
Yeah, yeah. And then they do have one in Germany too, and we did ammo testing at... was that Lapua or maybe it was at Anschutz? I actually don't know, but yeah, I know they did testing when they were over there with our rifles last time. So
okay,
yeah.
And then for the design, with the 3D printing, do you like share ideas with, is it Lost Nation, I think?
Yeah, Ethan. Yeah, I've talked to Ethan a little bit about it. He's kind of on a different platform. Like he's using an aluminum rail for his setup. So he has essentially an aluminum rail that everything attaches onto, which is honestly a really cool idea. It's really cool to see people approach the same problem from like completely different angles, right? Like it's awesome because Dave Bradley from Ottawa, he does CNC rifle stocks as well, and I always love quizzing him on his solutions to the same problem I have.
Is he from Biathlon Stocks?
That's right. Yeah, that's him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think from what I've heard, and I can't like verify this, but I know people like in Germany that played around with the aluminum rail design before, and I know that those rifles can be really, really picky on ammo, because what I was talking about before with the resonance on my rifle being higher than I expected with wood, aluminum's like even another step above that, right? Because there's no epoxy bedding or no absorption of the resonance at all. So I think when it's on aluminum and then the aluminum's like straight into your body, I think that makes it really tough to find an ammunition that'll work, get a good group.
And I would think that aluminum is also going to be quite sensitive to temperature changes or like extreme ones. Yeah,
that's true too. I mean, one of the problems I was having last year was I glued the hardware in. The way that the hardware was designed, I couldn't get a bolt, a screw through it into the 3D print. So I could only glue it into the 3D print. And there's a day on the range, -25, and my friend Zach and we both have the same standing blocks. I made them both. We both go onto the mat, and both of our standing blocks just like pop off because it was stainless steel actually, but it had shrunk, and the 3D print is nylon, which from my understanding doesn't shrink at all. So and it just cracked itself out of the plastic. So I had to glue that back together one of my failures last winter was like I just traveled with a stick of epoxy to fix it.
That's where you get the rolling eyes from your coaching.
Yeah, that's right. But I haven't noticed, the one problem I did have was the epoxy and the composite like layup expanding and contracting at a different rate than the plastic on the inside. And I haven't noticed that in the cold yet, but when I did notice that was I was curing the epoxy at a higher temperature. I put it in the oven at 60 degrees. And I think the plastic inside actually expanded, and I had done a layer of fabric around the whole thing, and this was a second layer, and it cracked the whole thing like along all the seams. So I pulled it out of the oven, and it just flaked off, like the back flaked off, the front flaked off. It just like had totally fallen apart. So coefficient of thermal expansion wasn't high on my list of things I was thinking about at the start. but I definitely am looking at it. I'm sure
Sade has a few books about that.
Yeah, so I haven't taken that class yet. So I wouldn't say it's engineering yet. I'd like to like get to the point where I could call it engineering, but right now it's just trial and error, to be completely honest with you. Like
isn't that exactly what engineering is?
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I just make something and then I take it out and then it fails. I'm like, oh, how did that fail? And then fix that part of it, and then it fails some other way. And then, after 24 months into it, I have something that works more or less most of the time.
Yeah.
So
I said Zach is a really good testing partner.
Yeah, well, Zach, he's really hard on his stuff. Like, he's an awesome guy. One of my best friends, but he breaks stuff that I would never imagine could be broken. So it's awesome because if he can't break it, then it's fine. I know it's like bomb proof.
Yeah.
So
But so when other teammates or even, other athletes, like, are they interested but still kind of want to stay away from it because it may break their comfort level with what they have, or like, what's the general feel?
Yeah, I think so. When I first started, and this was probably a bit on me, but I was super stoked about it, and I wanted to like try and get as many people trying it as possible. And it probably where I was at was not at that point yet. So I had like quite a few of my teammates tried a few, like some of the stuff that I made, and like stuff would break, and it like wouldn't really work. And the other thing was my design like skill on CAD wasn't to the point where I could replicate exactly what somebody was asking for. So then it, I was still mostly just working with mathematical shapes and not organic geometry. So so like it was really hard to get the nice curves of like a standing block that's been carved by hand, right? Like I would take somebody's standing block home, be like, yeah, I'm going to try and replicate this, and 4 hours later it would look, 70% of the way there, right? So I think if like one of the mistakes I probably made was, putting it out maybe a bit before it was ready. Some of the stuff that I wasn't like at the time I thought it was okay, but in hindsight wasn't good enough. And so I think that like now I don't know if I would say I have like a reputation where it's like, oh, Logan's trying something new again, right? But but there's definitely like that sort of vibe, which I'm like totally okay with. Like if people want my help with something, that's like totally fine, and if they don't, that's also totally fine. But yeah, I think we've like on our team, there's a few people that use my stuff, and most of it holds together. And there's a few people that try it that don't like it, and that's like totally cool too. So so that's kind of where we're coming at too. I do a lot of stuff for biathlon Saskatchewan though. So and they're like, I mean, I don't know if it's just the import fees, but to buy a standing block to fit on a generic Anschutz rifle is $125. So like my dad and I, because my dad has a 3D printer too now, we'll make 20 of them, right, and just give them to clubs.
I like how you said now.
Yeah, well, I was the first one.
You got him excited.
So like when I was a kid, my dad and I we would brainstorm stuff all the time. Like I can't even give you an example, but we'd think of a business plan for something, or to build something or an idea for something, and I'd be 13 or 14, be like, "Hey, Dad, let's do it like tomorrow." Right? And he'd be like, no, that's like, we're not going to build a motorcycle in our garage. Like that'd be crazy. And so then when I moved out, I think, I don't want to say I have I wouldn't call it like a chip on my shoulder, but I have an idea, and I remember the times when Dad's like, no, you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Prove him wrong.
Yeah. So that I've been, so I think I've maybe pushed him in that direction a little bit too. We're actually right now building so a CNC, a 4-axis CNC machine. So we're going to essentially do what I'm doing out of 3D printing. We're going to do it out of wood as well, just from a cost basis, because it takes me 3.5 weeks to make a rifle from start to finish. So, and not all that's work. It's about 30 hours of printing, and then laying up the fabric takes 2 days, and doing the vacuum bagging, and then coating and finishing an epoxy. You coat it, wait 24 hours, sand it, coat it again, wait 24 hours, and so that can take 6 days. So we really want to get something out, because I've sold a few of these rifles that I've made in the past 2 years. I've sold probably 3 now. But we want to get something out that we can sell for $1,300, like as an entry,
with action and everything.
No,
or
just
without the action. Okay, yeah.
But for my work effort on the 3D printed one, I can't get out the door for like $2,000.
Right.
So it's like super specific, like specialized, and I do everything custom. But so that's sort of where we're at. So we're building this CNC. It has a 4th axis rotation as well. So it's like a normal 3-axis, and then we added a spindle, like a rotating axis as well. So essentially we're going to have a block, a rectangular block of wood, and be able to do one cut, go from that to rifle stock, hopefully in like 12 hours, hopefully. Wow. So wow. That's sort of the plan. That's the project this summer is taking it another step further. And you know, I mean, I think if we could make like 5 or 10, that'd be pretty, like, I'd be super happy with that. But yeah, I've kind of, I think maybe I've, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but he's definitely, I mean, he's retired now too, right? So he just has more time.
Well, you got more time.
Yeah.
Than you. Yeah.
So, but I've led him down a few paths. I used to roast coffee as well. So when I lived in Whistler, this is like a side tangent, but I built a coffee roaster using a drill and then a voltage controller on my barbecue. So I used the propane element from the barbecue, use the voltage controller like you use for a light switch, and then that ran the drill at a slower speed. So anyway, so he actually built a coffee roaster as well to one-up me, I think, a little bit. So nice. So this is like our third like project together, which is super fun.
Awesome, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
that makes me jump. Sorry, Jordan.
I am having so much fun just listening to you guys talk about this. No, it's fantastic.
Because I was going to ask later, but I noticed that you have a pizza stove that you take camping. Did you fabricate that yourself as well?
No, I didn't. The Uni?
Okay.
No, but I love it. It's like
I'm almost disappointed.
It's so good. Yeah. I think it kind of tickles my brain in like just the right way, like making the dough the night before, and then it's like there's like a very like specific recipe, and then it's really hard to use without just making a huge mess. Getting stuff stuck in the oven. The oven's not hot enough. The oven's too hot. Yeah. It's not
propane, right?
It's wood fired. Yeah.
Wood fired.
Yeah. So, yeah. So it's just like one of those things that it could be so much easier, but the fact that it's difficult is like better. I don't know. It's just like more fun. More enjoyable for me to go through the steps, and then when it works, it's like a lot more satisfying, I find.
Yeah, and then your dad can then make a better version, and then
they bought one too.
Keep the challenge going.
Yeah, yeah.
So is the idea that 10, 15 years from now we can see advertising for Pletz stocks endorsed by former world champion in biathlon Logan?
Former world champion. Yeah, well, hopefully we're advertising them sooner than that. I think I'll have a pretty good working prototype in the next 6 months. I don't know what the future holds, I guess, sort of it's that question.
I have a feeling with you that can go any direction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I really like my days off. I really just love my time in the garage or on my computer, just like working through my workflow. And it's like such a, I mean, maybe I'm kind of, I'm like usually a really social guy. The past month or two, I've just been do you want to go, people are asking, you want to go for coffee? It's like, no, I'm okay. I'm just going to hang out and work on something in the garage.
I got this thing going.
Yeah, I got this thing going on. So, so I don't know, to be honest, where I'll land. Maybe it's rifle stocks. It's probably not, though, to be honest. To me, it's okay, what skill sets am I learning here that are going to be valuable, down the road, right? And so, every time I feel like when I take on a project, I'm adding 2 or 3 skill sets that when I take on the next project, it's already easier. Right.
Well, 3D printing is so versatile.
Yeah, and even getting into woodworking now too. I've never worked with wood before. I mean, apart from when I was hanging out in my dad's shop when I was 12 years old, but it's not something I have done a lot of. But yeah, there is like a sort of a confidence that carries over from one creative enterprise to another too, right? And so I think, yeah, there's definitely something to that. And I mean, the CAD is useful everywhere. I mean,
for sure, yeah.
The other day I just needed.
Well, and I think Stocks is now just very practical for you.
Yeah, that's true too, right? And the other thing that it did for me was I learned like so much about my position too, right? Like when I went through my prone position last year completely, and okay, is my front hand at a 5-degree angle or a 3-degree angle, and what sort of difference does that make? Right. So I went through from what I can tell, every variable along the way to the point where the confidence is, well, I know it works for me because I've tried everything else. Right. So there's no unknown of like, oh, what if I change this a little bit? It's like, oh no, I've worked through that already. So, yeah. And some of the like things I didn't even know on rifle stocks were a problem. The offset, like the butt plates, how far left or right it is of the sight. If you're looking down the sight line, like the butt plate sits to the like shooter's right a little bit. It can be anywhere from 0 mils to 20 mils. Right, and it just like sets your shoulder out a little bit relative to your face. But that was one of the problems I had of the first one, was that it was actually it was too inside. So my shoulder was inside of my face on the first one I designed.
Right.
So stuff like that, where it's like, oh, okay, now I just know, you know, when I'm going through my position, I'm feeling, okay, this feels a little bit weird. Oh, it's probably coming from this, right? And so I feel like I've gotten a lot more in tune, and when I want to make a change, I can tell, okay, that worked, or that didn't work at all, right?
Right.
So, and I think that's it's super valuable for me, like over the next year as well, or like over the next like part of my career, right? And yeah, I mean, I went through a phase of like a lot of changes, and I'm hoping to like settle down a little bit now, where I'm not, you know, showing up on the range with some new piece of plastic every other 2 weeks. But so I'm excited to maybe move my curiosity and interest into like a bit more into another domain, so it doesn't impact my biathlon as much as well. A little bit.
Yeah.
Because at the same time it's like, okay, January 5th, probably don't need to be changing anything. So
sure. Yeah.
Jordan, why don't you take over for
it? So see, I was just sitting here, I was just listening to you guys having a great conversation. So you've mentioned several times about how last year your prone shooting got much better, and then anybody, you can just go look at the numbers. You know, IBU Cup, World Cup, doesn't matter, at least 10% better. Prone shooting, standing didn't get much better. So you've mentioned a couple things, but like, is there anything in particular right now that you're working on with the rifle or whatever that is specifically for the standing shooting? And then is there a worry, is there a concern that a change that you make towards the standing shooting will then negatively affect the positive momentum you gained last year with the prone shooting?
Right. Yeah, I think, so I mean, the first part of that question, I think there's like a movement in biathlon right now towards, I mean, look at Johannes Bo's standing position, like where his face is on his sight, where his shoulder is like forward. Everything is like forward. So his shoulder and his back shoulder and his rear hip are almost in line, right? Whereas it used to be that your shoulders would be like back of your hips, not forward of your hips.
Sure.
Right? Like you'd sort of be leaning back in the position. So, and I think Mats Overby is another guy that does it even more extreme than Johannes does. So I looked at that last year and I'm like, okay, how do I get into that? First of all, what is there to that, right? Why are they doing that? And then second of all, how do I get myself in that position just to see if that works, right? And so one of the challenges I had with my old stock was that none of the adjustment could get high enough to put me in that position. The butt, like Johannes's butt plate, his bottom butt hook, the one you use for standing, is like it's like 3 inches higher than we used to have them, like on a standard setup. Like it's like a huge difference. So rifles aren't built to go into that position. So when I built mine, I built the whole rear end quite a bit higher. So instead of like from the pistol grip, instead of it sloping down, it actually just stays the same height. And that does two things. First of all, I'm using sight risers, as are a lot of men nowadays, right? And so I don't have to have my cheek piece, like the cheek piece doesn't have to be raised to the maximum. It can be like have a more adjustable window, because the sight is 25 millimeters higher than it normally is. So then everything on the back end has to come up 25 millimeters. And then the second thing is that the butt plate adjustment is all the adjustable range is higher. So like my lowest position on my butt plate is the highest position it would have been on the last stock I had. So it's like there's a real like
not talking small changes.
Yeah. So and so the way I think about it, right, is like let's go to the extreme. Let's see if that works, and then let's work backwards until, because I think if you go to the extreme, you can figure out, okay, this either feels good that it's worth exploring, and maybe it's halfway, or this doesn't work at all, and then you go back to halfway anyways, right? So or back to where you were. So anyway, so I've been trying to get myself into this position, and the part I'm struggling with still, and I'm kind of figuring out in the past week or so, is when his face is on his sight, it's instead of his face being straight up, it's actually on like quite a bit of an angle. So his forehead is over his sight relative to his chin, right? And so it looks like he's looking through his eyebrow when he's shooting prone too, but so I can't get perfect concentric circles through my sight. I can't see through my sight properly looking essentially like what would be straight, like almost straight up, right? Like when you have your face
but
far
that's
forward.
Also physical shape, and
so, and that has to do with cheek piece position a little bit as well. So I've sort of found a middle ground, I think, a little bit, where I pushed my sight forward a little bit, and it gave me a bit more room off the front of my cheek piece. So my face kind of falls off the front of my cheek piece now. So instead of it contacting right under my eye, it actually contacts just a little bit further back. And that allows me to not have the circles turn into ovals, essentially what was happening, right? Like the peep sight circle would be sliced at the top and the bottom. So and so when you do that, you also have to move your standing block up, like closer to the action, because where the butt hook places the rifle, it places the whole rifle lower on your body, essentially. So when you have when butt hook is in the position he has it, then the reach on your other hand, on your standing block hand, is quite a bit shorter. So versus the other way, if you're leaning back into the position, and you have your butt hook this much, like 3 inches below that, then the whole rifle is shifted up on your position as well, right? So I think there's something to it, to be honest. Like I only really figured out how to get into this position in the past like week or so, and it's still like pretty uncomfortable. But my like stability on the scat, like you guys know a scat trainer, like I can hold like.
Do you, Jordan?
So
I was going to let you describe it, and then I was going to ask like an idiot. So
for sure, yeah. So it's a like a indoor laser shooting trainer, essentially. So
got it.
So but you can record a session where you just, without taking a shot, you just trace, like hold on the middle of the target, and you can just see how stable your hold is. Right. So in prone, you should be able to hold within the 9 ring. And standing, you should be able to hold within like the 6 or the 7 ring, right? Like you should be able to keep the rifle on the sights on the black essentially the whole time. And so it's a good tool to see, okay, change something without even taking a shot. You can see, did that make me more stable or less stable? Right. And then there's like there's the trigger mechanics after that, where it's like, okay, am I pulling 3 inches off to the left when I pull the trigger? But the actual like stability of the position is completely separate from what you're doing with the trigger. Yeah.
Just for reference, if I see something black when I'm standing shooting, I'm happy. So it's a different level.
Yeah.
Completely different level, but
yeah. So I was able to see improvements on that test essentially, like that we were working on. So I think it's worth looking into a bit more over the next few weeks, and we'll see, I guess, where I go.
You haven't approached Johannes yet?
No, I haven't approached him. Maybe in passing after the race is over. He's usually long gone by the time I've started and finished an individual or pursuit race. But our coaches do coaching sessions with their coaching staff, so there is a bit of like information crossover, I think. Right. So I was able to quiz my coach Andrew on, hey, why are they doing that, right? And he's like, hey, well, Ziggy told me this, and I'm like, okay, let's look at that. Maybe that makes sense. So yeah. So we'll see how my standing percentage goes next year, I guess, is the short.
It's clearly it's going to follow the same trajectory. There's no reason to believe otherwise. Right? All evidence so far, right, is that you start making tweaks and 10% improvement. Here it comes.
And so your super fast shooting time, and many Canadians are often in the top fast shooters. Is that just something that, as Team Canada, just a thing that they focused on?
It was a big focus in the past few years. Yeah, I would say not as much anymore. Just with like coaching changes and stuff like that. But I think there's like obviously some historical, like Adam and Christian, previous coaching staff, they're still carrying over their processes and stuff like that. Yeah, I would say we practice probably even faster than we are on the World Cup. Like we can practice prone in 24 seconds and standing in under 20 seconds. And then when you're shooting standing in 22 seconds, it's like you got 4 seconds to spare, essentially.
Right.
So, and I think there's like a disconnect between, okay, I'm taking a longer time and I'm doing a better job. Those don't always go together, right? Just because you're on the mat for 40 seconds doesn't mean that you're actually, you might just be holding your breath and praying. So I think there's that thought process too, where it's like, hey, we're on the mat, we're just doing our process, and we're probably doing a little bit slower than we practiced. But the whole sport is moving that way too. Like we're not the only ones anymore. I think a few years ago, we were definitely like the fastest all the time, like Christian and Scott. And nowadays there's guys ripping, under sub 20 standings often, right?
I'm in the middle of writing an article about Emilien Jacquelin, where Jordan and I have had numerous times where like, if he would just take a little more time, and I'm just in the middle of the analysis, but I'm finding that most of his shots that are slower are actually misses.
Oh, okay, really?
So it's like you said, it's not necessarily for him. It doesn't feel like it's better to take more time.
Yeah,
but I'm not quite finished yet. But
I won't talk about Emilien's, but he's a character to watch sometimes. It's very entertaining.
Oh yeah.
Super entertaining.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
So he's kind of the X factor in biathlon that we need a little bit, right? Like it's like
totally, yeah.
So I think it's good for the sport for sure.
Yeah. I always wonder what it does to the other athletes in a mass start, for example, where he just shoots off, and the other athlete must be like, okay, am I going to go with him and then maybe blow up, or am I going to hope that he's just going to miss 4 times? And
yeah, Lenzerhead this year was a great example, right? Where like he was winning like massive, like 20-second lead or something after second prone, and then but yeah, went out too hard, I guess. I don't know, you'd have to ask him, but that's what it looked like watching on TV when the ski speed kind of dropped off. But yeah, hopefully
it looked like he hit a wall.
Yeah, well, maybe that. Yeah, Lenzerhead course, from what I understand, I've never raced there. Hopefully this year, but it's not the most forgiving course. So
right. What do you mean hopefully? You're on the senior national team.
When you race there.
When we get to the ones
when
that
you
have
race there.
minutes, right?
Yeah, when you race there in February.
Yeah.
So I see that there's only 2 on there, and I actually didn't see Zach's name at all on the Biathlon Canada. Is he just on a development team, or?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
It's about you.
Just Adam and I this year. Personal choice. That's all I'll say about it.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, and then Christian retired, obviously. So, and I think we just have like a little bit of a gap in our men's field in terms of like age groups as well. We have a really strong 2004, 2005, 2006 group of guys. A few top 8s at youth junior worlds this year. So, but I think we need they're going to have to come up at some point, but I think this year was probably a bit too soon. And they're all, there's other guys that weren't at junior worlds that are just as strong as those guys too. There's quite a 7 or 8 of them, and I don't think it's fair to pick up 1 or 2 of them out of that pool yet either, right? So it's better it's better to have all of them training together and getting better.
Let them develop.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, it's definitely a tough. Go ahead.
Will you guys run a relay in some of these events, or will you just kind of skip it and say, you know what, we just won't have it, for a couple of weeks this year?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll still have 3 or 4 guys on the World Cup for few of the weekends. I think. I mean, we're just not sure yet. There's a budget stuff too, right? So,
of course.
And then the other thing is, do we want to race people up just to race the relay, or are they better off racing IBU Cup or Junior Worlds, right? Because it's
exactly
like the travel and the racing. I mean, and I've done 2 years of this. Like last year wasn't my best year, but I was there and I was racing. But when you're racing bad and you're traveling every week, it gets so brutal, away from home. By the 3rd week, it's like, I don't even want to be here anymore, because you race a sprint and then you wait a week, and then maybe you race a sprint and a relay, and then you wait another week, right? And so then you're watching your friends race, and maybe they're racing well, and it's like, oh, that's awesome, but I'm still just sat in my hotel room. So there's something to that for sure, to make sure we're at the right level. The challenging part this year, I think, is that we are sort of in a fight for Nations Cup standings, right, for the Olympics. So we do have to finish in the top 20 to get 4 Olympic start spots next year. So not attending also isn't really an option, because then if we don't attend, we don't get Nations Cup points, and then the whole thing sort of goes down from there. So it'll be. I'm interested to see. I think our staff are committed to making the best plan with the resources that we have, and make the best of it and see where we get to, for sure.
Right. Hey, about your races in Canmore, I know they weren't your best races of the season. Was that extra pressure being at home, or relatively home, or
no?
Was it end of season?
Yeah, end of season. Yeah. So this last year, I was struggling a lot with energy issues in general, energy deficiency, just being able to eat enough. Our physiology team tells me I burn pretty hot calorie wise. So I'm 6'2" and 160 pounds most of the time. So it takes about 5,000 calories to keep me going in a day, which is not easy from an appetite perspective. So
okay. So
I think, and I did do a few things differently last year. I didn't take a rest month last year. I just trained through April. So by Canmore, I was 24 months into a season, essentially.
Right.
So, and would I do it differently if I could do it again? Probably, yeah. But it's a learning experience, and I think I had good races last year at the start of the year, but I did, just January, February, started to sort of go down a slide that I never recovered from. And I think Soldier Hollow and Canmore was the culmination of that. So, yeah, but it was a good learning experience. I'm definitely doing things a bit differently this year. in terms of just like my fueling strategy. So we'll see if I can keep it together by the time we get to...
I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, I can find an easy way to get 5,000 calories in me, but I'm guessing you guys are not lining up at Tim Hortons for for a couple of extra donuts. So
no, that's for sure. So yeah, I'm trying to do more like intra-workout fueling this year. So like my goal is to hit 60 to 70 grams of carbs per hour of activity per like during the activity, which is something I haven't done before. So Tour de France cyclists will do 110. Which is like your body can really only do about 90 to 100 before your stomach gives up. So, but like when you're taking in carbs all the time, it's actually like kind of protecting like your muscles because then you're not using your muscles as energy essentially, right? So, because after 2 hours of activity, you start to break down all sorts of stuff that isn't sugar. So
that's why I never exercise more than an hour, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with me being too tired.
Self-preservation.
Yeah. So,
I'm sure those numbers change a bit when you get older too.
Yeah.
No, not at all. No. Well, maybe they go down. Yeah. RJ, you got to limit yourself to 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, soon I'm not going to be able to do anything. And that's not going to happen. But
I'm sure it being June, and I don't know, when the final decision gets made. But you touched on this a little bit with Nations Cup points, and I know last year it was kind of an unusual schedule. I know that you guys weren't there every week. It was kind of it felt a little bit just from the sidelines felt a little bit disjointed just in the way it was scheduled. I know you personally, it looks like from your combined schedule between the IBU Cup and the World Cup, you were racing pretty much every weekend, but I think the World Cup group wasn't there necessarily every week. So do you know, is that going to be the same plan this year? Or like I said, is it just June? It's just too early to know?
Yeah, I think it's just too early. Like I really hope we can get to more than we did last year. Because I think we really need to. Like it does, like from an organizational perspective, it gets really expensive to go to Oslo for a weekend. Like it's really easy to dart around Europe in a car or in the few vans that we have, and flying up to Norway, and then you're there for the weekend, and then, you got to bring all your stuff with you. And so I think that there were some strategic, like Oslo last year was one of them. It just didn't really make sense to plan. And we came back and did a training camp and stuff. So just trying to optimize the races that we were at for sure. But I'm like confident that we'll be there. A bit more often this year. But it's too soon to say for sure. So
yeah, of course. Yeah, like I said, it's June. I wouldn't expect you to have it all laid out already.
Yeah. But
no, I was curious. It's easy to think for us spectators that being from North America, that it was an advantage to be back in North America for the last two. But because you were in Europe quite a long time, is that really an advantage, or do you think it was pretty much as hard for you guys as for anybody else? Or
we came back a week early. So we the Oslo Soldier Hollow transfer was quite difficult, I know, because they finished racing on Oslo on the Sunday, and I think they were racing in Soldier Hollow on the Thursday even, or the Friday. It was tough. So
it was quick.
Yeah, so we didn't do that. I think that both Canmore and Soldier Hollow were quite warm as well, which gets into the wax, and that's a whole nother, thing that's changed this year for everybody. It's pretty the floras or the no floras, I think, they're definitely slower in general, but I think they're also really hard to hit the window. Like the working window is quite a bit smaller than on the fluorinated waxes. So I think, challenges with that in and out as well. But we spent a lot of time in Soldier Hollow too, right? So we're down there in the summer, and the altitude as well. We're pretty used to the 1,400, 1,500, 1,600 meters. which is quite a bit different than racing at 300 or 400 meters in route holding or wherever. So that makes a big difference too.
Sure.
It definitely felt, I was a lot happier racing in Soldier Hollow. The food was a lot better this year than it was at World Juniors in 2022. So thumbs up to the organizing committee for that. And Campbell World Cup, obviously, that was just an awesome weekend. I mean, apart from the fact that I kind of sucked, but just having my family there and being able to watch my friends like race the pursuit as well.
Yeah.
So, and having people cheer for you, it's like such a crazy difference.
and it, I don't know what your expectations were, but I was blown away by the crowds. And, because I was almost a bit worried that, I've been at the IBU Cup the year before, and I mean, it's great with the people that were there, but it wasn't a lot of people.
That's right. Yeah.
So then you're always like, well, if the IBU has an event there and there's like a couple hundred people, then it may not be very persuasive to come back. But I think
they nailed it.
Pretty amazing.
And the weather too. Yeah. The weather was perfect for spectating. Yeah. So I hope they come back. I mean, we've got to get a bid in one of these years coming up to get something back. But I think it was definitely a better experience than the 2019 minus 25 and canceled races situation. So,
I did notice that on the World Cup, your first race on the World Cup was in Ruhpolding. That must have been a bit of an eye opener going from
first individual race,
a couple hundred people.
I did the single mix. I did the single mix relay in Pokljuka with Benita.
Right.
And I fell and broke one of my skis. The first time I've ever fallen and broke a ski in a race ever. World Cup start, of course. Yeah. But it was like the 1.5K in Pokljuka is like a roller coaster of a track to like crazy corners, and it's like straight up and then straight back down into the range. So, it was fun for the first bit. I mean, I was in sixth. I started, cleaned my prone, came out. It was like Christensen, Ader, somebody else, and then me. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And then promptly 12 minutes later, I'm like on one Fisher ski, on one Rossi ski, like in the penalty loop after standing. So it didn't last very long, but and then Ruhpolding individual, 20K individual there.
But mostly the amount of people must be kind of a shock, even though I'm sure you were prepared for it. But
I mean, it's a huge change for sure. And the way the stands are set up, you can hear and see everybody, right? Like it's very contained. That was that day, specifically the race, super warm overnight. They tried to salt the course in the morning. Didn't really work. So the first 20 bibs had like a crazy ski advantage. Like it would have been like I think Johannes outskied everybody by like a minute something that day. Because the course broke down. It went from not frozen but not slush to mashed potatoes in an hour and a half by the time I got out there. So and then the 4K in Ruhpolding, we don't use it that often because usually it's sprint pursuit relay in Ruhpolding, from what I understand on the World Cup schedule. But the 4K also has a death corner on the backside. So I was like paranoid because I'd just fallen and broke a ski in a World Cup race. And then I'm on the training day, the day before the race, I'm like, I have to do this corner 5 times at race speed and try and keep it together and try not to fall like for the second time in 2 World Cup starts. So it was like on the edge. I managed to keep it together, I guess. I know Adam at one point, I don't know if there's a video of it, but he had one ski on the barrier, like on the crash barrier, and one ski on the snow going around the corner. Like it was super gnarly. So I hope, I don't know if we're doing another 20K there, but I hope it's not. Probably not my favorite course for that. So.
Is that the only event where they use that corner?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The individual? Yeah. Oh, good. So do you have any specific goals set? Improving standing shooting, probably one of them.
Yeah, that'd be one of them for sure. I think the other thing I'm looking forward to this year is just like I guess I talked about a bit before, but just like the energy level. Like I feel like I just want to show up in the winter and feel like I'm there, like ready to race. And so I don't really have a specific like placing or goal in mind, but I mean, I know the level I can get to in the summer, and which I'm like super happy with relative to my teammates. And I know the like numbers that I can put up relative to my teammates, like on the treadmill and stuff like that. And it would just be like huge for me if that, like when, not if, but when that translates in the winter season, right? So, yeah. So yeah. Then I'll be stoked to be over there, right? which will be
of course. Yeah,
enjoyable. Because yeah, like I said, third week in, you know, and you're not race pursuits, is like, yeah, this is getting pretty old. But yeah, I think I got a good plan in place. So with a little luck, I'll be able to keep it together.
And then the long run goal is Olympics.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, got a lot to shake out with Nations Cup. Obviously, it's going to be a lot easier to qualify for the Olympics if we have 4 start spots versus 2. For me, because you know, I'm probably second or third guy, right? So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to, you know, just, I mean, this season, I'm just looking forward to like racing again and like racing well, and that's kind of priority number 1. And then when that goes well, then I'm looking forward to next year as well, or next year. Yeah, 25, 26. Yeah, that's right. So
right. I have one more question, and then we'll probably let you go because we've already taken a long time.
Yeah.
Just curious how much you use stats. Like I know most racers after race they check biathlon results just for the kind of basic information. Is that what you do, or do you do more, or do you not really? Is it more about did it feel well, or?
Yeah, I would say I'm like pretty like stat oriented. Like I like data. I think biathlon's tough because, well, I mean, you're probably well aware of the variables that are taken into account between ski speed and course. And it's like, you know, if I do a lot of running in the summer because my girlfriend's like quite a good half marathon and 10K runner. And she goes out for a workout, and if it was, you know, 3:20 a kilometer for her workout pace, that was good. And if it was 3:35, then that wasn't so good. And it's black and white, right? And we don't have that option in biathlon because, you know, even on roller skis, it's like I could ski the same roller ski course and it could take me 30 seconds slower because it was 5 degrees outside instead of 10, or and the bearings are slow in the roller skis, right? So, so we have a bit of objective data on the treadmill, obviously, shooting range as well. But I mean, I would be interested to see how we can like sort of weed out a few of those outliers and variables. And like, you know, I'd really like to see a chart where I can like track my performance without it being a little bit of this, a little bit of that in the notes, right? It's like, oh, you did pretty well, but like these are the variables. So biathlon results, I go on there. Yeah. I guess to answer your question more specifically, I usually check after. I was reading your article the other day about the ski speed, like the brand wax nation comparison article. So I thought that was super interesting. I really hope it starts to even out this next year, where we're all on the same playing field. Because last year we were not all on the same playing field.
Do you mind elaborating on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some nations that spent, you know, a couple million euros on wax technology, and I think there are some nations that didn't or can't, right? And I think we're in the second boat of the, you know, can't, just budget wise. So I think, I mean, our guys do a great job. but they can only work with what they've got to an extent. And I think a lot of the nations are using not branded waxes, right? Like not stuff you can buy off the shelf. I think they have stuff that they're making, or to some degree. So I think, I think it's in the IBU's best interest to look at how we can get the competition closer together, because like there are some results last year, all credit due to the athletes that are putting up results, but we have junior men and women occasionally from the bigger nations, top 6, top 10 on World Cup, go from IBU to top 10 at World Champs or a World Cup, and that's like happens occasionally, but it happened a lot last year, right? So, and guys that you could just tell first lap of the race, okay, like they're not in it today. Like this team isn't in it today. So
it seemed like there were more outliers in general, like days where like even a team friends was just hitting it, but other days they were like skiing on molasses almost.
Yeah, and I think the other thing,
and there was a lot of teams that had that.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind is that the skis feel slower across the board. All conditions, they always feel slower. So the athlete feedback is like, well, my skis are slow, but were they slower relative to the field? Maybe not. So it's really difficult for the team to coordinate around were they good, were they bad, because what used to feel like a bad ski is that might be like okay now, right? So so we're still trying to figure that out. I know our team last year had struggles with that too, where we'd finish the race, be like, guys, this wasn't it, and the text like, well, we did a glide out against Switzerland and they were the same as Switzerland, so like the data isn't correlating. So I think that's going to be the challenge, right? Is first of all, do we have to train differently to train on slower skis, right? So what's the new normal? Do we have to change stuff in the summer? Do we need slower roller skis? Right? Maybe we do.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And then in the winter, is the technique slightly different? Is it not? Because the sprint races are 10%, like 3 minutes slower on average, like year over year, right? I mean, you know this. You probably looked at all the results. So like the whole field is slower. And then the other crazy thing about it is that like the ski gaps are massive. Right, like the ski course time gaps are twice what they used to be. Like you used to have 20 guys within a minute on a sprint race, 30 guys within a minute sometimes, right? Ski speed wise, and now you can make a pursuit on the World Cup 3:30 back, 60th place, right? So, and last lap as well, like last lap ski time, huge gaps across the board, right? Like which I see as a bit of fatigue, bit of the wax wearing down a little bit. So maybe the teams that really nailed it, last lap's going to show up a bit better than the teams that missed it, and
that could still be adjustment to the new wax, the fluorless wax, in how to plan your race, right? Yeah, and like the crazy thing about it is there's variables with these waxes that like we've never had to consider before. And the example I have is we were noticing significant differences, the same wax applied at 2 different iron temperatures. So we applied it at 220 Celsius, slow iron on, and then we applied it at 300 Celsius, fast, just whip the iron across the ski, and there's like a meter difference in glide out. Wow. So, so that's all new discovery, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, we're just
with
trying
the new
to figure
waxes
it out.
and.
Yeah. So, anyways,
it's funny you mentioned the time differences because it makes me go full circle back to the Montreal Formula One Grand Prix with the qualification where 2 cars. What was the lap, 112 or something?
Yeah,
and
flat,
the 2 top cars drive exactly the same at a thousandth of a second.
Yeah. It's only the second time it's happened since they've been keeping track to 3 decimal places, I think, right?
I know. It's just Like, it makes you think if somebody had a mosquito on the bumper, he would probably beat the other guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Just that small.
What a race though today, hey? Man, it was all time.
Oh yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
yeah.
But
I like rain races, but when it's rain and then dry and then potential rain and then I love that. Just maybe not always with the fairest results.
It's true. Yeah, it's definitely a bit of chance.
But
yeah,
definitely makes an interesting race.
Yeah.
But
so,
Jordan, did you have any?
No, I was just going to, Logan,
question?
before we let you go, we specifically did this interview tonight because you're going to be leaving soon. Do you mind sharing with everybody where you're going?
yeah, I'm going to the oil field. My cousin owns a company that does oil surveying for pipelines. So
Yeah.
World Cup fees are not getting any less in the Canadian sports system right now. Government sport funding hasn't increased since 2005. Last time we got an increase to Biathlon Canada.
Wow.
Oh, man.
So yeah, it's getting pretty pretty tough out there, I would say. So yeah, my solution this year, I'll be away for 5 weeks, not continuous, but 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and then 2 weeks on again, then 1 week, taking me into the end of August. Just like sort of 2 hours north of Edmonton. So that should be I'm looking forward to it, honestly. It should be fun.
You bringing the roller
Obviously,
skis?
I can't bring the roller skis, but I will be doing a lot of running. I do a lot of running for my training in the summer anyways, so
yeah.
But it's like 12-hour days, so I'll be busy most of the day, and then I'll have to squeeze something in after supper, I guess. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's funny. You emailed, it's good timing because I'll be up in the oil patch or something like that. And Jordan texted me, oil patch?
I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is what it is. I'm not bitter over it or anything.
Oh, no.
It's gonna be fun. My cousin and I are like pretty good friends, and we have pretty similar, I think, mindsets too. So it'll be fun to hang out with him for an extended period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Wow. I'll tell you what, it is not at all what I expected to read in the email there. I was like, oh, yeah.
Oh, Jordan, you got so much to learn before you can make it over.
I really do. I know.
Yeah.
They are the Edmonton Oilers, but
yeah,
that's true.
Right? I'm right. I'm correct. Okay, I want to make sure I was correct.
Right. Yeah. Oh.
Are you cheering for them, Logan?
I've been watching.
Or are you?
I'm not really an NHL guy on the regular season, but I'll get involved when Canadian team makes it to the playoffs. So and past in the Stanley Cup. So I've been watching.
Happen too often.
Yeah. So I know it's been good. So.
Yeah. Well, Logan, thank you so much for your time. It was really fun. Maybe a little overkill on the rifles for some people, but I really enjoyed it.
No worries at all.
I really appreciate you being so open
about it.
What
else
is
the summer for? But like a really nice conversation about like the technical aspects of rifles.
That's right.
And I mean that with all seriousness. Like, when else are you going to have that conversation?
Yeah. Well, May, June's the best time to do it, right? So best time to switch to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, this is it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to watching the World Cup and seeing what rifle you came up with and and how it's working for you.
No, I'm also looking forward to seeing if I can pull it together before the winter. Yeah. So no, I don't have the learning curve that I did last year, so it should be. I'm more confident for sure. So.
Yeah. No, that's super exciting. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.